Welcome to the Breakthrough Moments podcast, a podcast where challenges meet opportunities. I'm Harold, and together with my co-host Lasse, we explore stories of innovators, leaders, professionals, and entrepreneurs and how they turn obstacles into game-changing breakthroughs. Get ready for insights that inspire and lessons that last. Subscribe now and let's dive into the moments that define success. Welcome to today's episode of the Breakthrough Moments podcast. Today we have the honor of having Inga with us, who is a performance and leadership coach specializing in elite coaching for ambitious leaders and organizations. She's a co-founder and CEO of Elevating Leadership Institute, and with a background spanning 15 years in performance psychology and leadership. I'm actually going to redo this, so I'm just going to cut this afterwards. So here we go. Second go. Welcome to today's episode of the Breakthrough Moments podcast. Today we have the honor of having Inga with us. And Inga is a performance and leadership coach specializing in elite coaching for ambitious leaders and organizations. She's a co-founder and CEO of Elevating Leadership Institute with a background spanning over 15 years in performance psychology and leadership. Inga's journey is unique, which spans from being an Olympic-level javelin thrower to a business leader, which provides her a rich perspective on personal growth, resilience, and pushing boundaries. So I want with that to say welcome to the podcast, Inga.
So nice to be here, Harold. Thank you for having me.
So I got the opportunity to have a quick chat before we jumped on and started this recording to learn more about your story, what you're currently doing, what you have been doing in the past in terms of your let's say, athletic pursuits, but also lately in terms of business pursuits. But for the people that don't know you, what you do, could you give us a brief background?
You already a little bit introduced me as a professional athlete, former professional athlete, Olympic athlete, transitioned that knowledge of sports performance into the business because both fields really interest me all the times. And this pushing boundaries, one coach in Lithuania showed me already how physically we can transform. And it was a shock for me how one day I can be super strong. In a few months, I can be super fast. And that transition, how you can see the physical appearance was fascinating. And my second coach, Dan Lang at USC, University of Southern California, he showed me what also our characters can be transformed. And that completely blew my mind because I was so proud and interested building the image what I wanted for myself, and I thought this is what I am, take it or leave it. Quite obnoxiously, but then that attitude got me in few conflicting situations. Not setting up for success, nor me nor people around me. And then he showed me how to also work on your character, on your skills, on your how you feel towards certain things, especially competitions, especially me as a professional athlete. That completely fascinated me, our ability to transform. And this is where I started also using when I started becoming professional as a business analyst. Here I could see the bigger connections to the real life and then products and services and wealth what we're creating for each other on many levels. So this experience what I had from my youth to adulthood really shaped how I viewed us and then what kind of future we're creating for ourselves in the business sense. So I'm still fascinated by that question. What are our limits? How to push them in healthy ways? Where are those limits? Where should be those boundaries and limits? So I'm still that athlete mindset person, only in different fields now, also working now with professionals all around the world in the most challenging, ambitious industries. And we keep creating how in healthy ways we can approach that high performance. I don't want to reduce the ability to create amazing things, but I want to create the support systems for them where they can actually enjoy it too. The gifts, the skill sets, the knowledge, what they developed through years. So that's what I do.
Yeah, that's nice. So one of the things that you mentioned that when we spoke last that I really liked and I would like to go more into is you mentioned that your journey began with kind of like exploring your own limits, like
Mhm.
as an athlete, and now as a coach in terms of helping others, in terms of achieve their potential and pushing their own boundaries. Can you share kind of like what made you so interested in that? I'm like, okay, where's my limits? How far can I push this? Was there anything in particular that made this be kind of like the main focus or the main thing, or was it something that just randomly came to be as a result of sports?
Very good question. Yeah, main experience kind of were grounded. My experience, especially career wise, was how I qualified for Olympics. It was
Mm,
the situation where I worked for over 10 years. I had the chances to go to other Olympics, but I was for the first one a bit too young. So I thought like there's a whole future ahead of me. I will have many more chances. I kind of didn't skip off that fact, but every 4 years, it's not so many Olympics for the
yes.
athletes to be. But I felt myself, I'm a bit too young to handle this kind of pressure. Second time, I got injured. So
Mm,
that was super frustrating. And then the third one, Beijing Olympics, I was physically, mentally, emotionally ready to compete at a high level. However, this need to reach result kind of locked me into this. I felt like I have a wall where javelin stops and then and lands at the same result because I was chasing. Even though I know all the practical techniques, what you shouldn't think too much about result, you should focus
hmm
on what makes those results, those movements, those practices. But this wish to go to Olympics finally, now or never, totally locked my mindset. So when I arrived back to Lithuania for Lithuanian nationals, there was already one lady set to go to Olympics because she had from previous year better mark than me.
mm,
However, she was not performing too well, and then federation decided what they will create conditions who gonna go to Olympics, how they gonna select a member of the javelin throwing event. So they said if I will beat my opponent by 5 meters during Lithuanian national champions, I will go.
mm,
So I did. They didn't know what to do because they thought this condition is not possible to meet.
yeah.
And then they decided to create duel. So
Mm,
in 2 days we had to meet again, and now we had for final time duel each other. We had three throws. The coin was tossed. The media people were in the stands. Who gonna go first? It was her turn to start the competition. And we had a bit different conditions too. She just had to beat me to go to Olympics. For me to go, I had to beat her, but also had to have qualifying mark
mm,
Olympics, that kind of distance, at
yeah.
least to have that kind of distance. So again, not only beating my opponent's mark, but also aiming for really long distance. What is qualifying officially for Olympics again? So my opponent threw. It was quite good mark. I threw. It was a little bit better. She threw. She beat my mark. Then I beat hers. Third last throw for her. She completely broke down emotionally. It was not counted her throw. So now I won, but now I need to throw for the mark.
Mm,
And the mark what I've been chasing whole year long, but it was always stopping my javelin before that mark. However, when I stepped on the runway, I was wondering, should I be nervous right now? Because even though it was like about 10, 15 years what I practiced and competed in the field, but this kind of feeling I never had before, where I
mm,
was so calm, present. I knew what I shouldn't be in any other place, just here. And I already knew what I will make that mark, that before even the throw. And I did. But this experience, it completely blew my mind. After 15 years being in a sport, being in a similar situation, I still can discover new feelings,
Mm.
new experiences in the same thing, but in such extraordinary feelings. I just like, what else is there? How can I repeat this experience? Not only this randomly what happened to me, but maybe I create conditions where I can have this feeling more often. How can I share that feeling for others to create
Yeah.
that this is that.
Yeah. So was it that moment that started the thought process which led into, okay, let's not just focus on sports, but help others as a coach as well? Was that the kind of like the pivotal moment where that path opened up to you?
That was for me. My pivotal moment to share with others was when I was forced
Mm.
to. I presented the strategy for company how to increase effectiveness and
Mm.
efficiency, and they asked me to implement it. And the director with whom I needed to make the changes said, "Yes, the plan and strategy is really good. Great job, Inga, but no."
Mm.
It's gonna be too much work for her. They already learned how to live the problems, what I presented, what needed to be solved. And I was left with, still need to do my job. I still need to implement the strategy. And the main person says no.
Mm.
So this is where I started bridging sports psychology into the business world, business behavior. When I started understanding too what, yes, I like good strategy, but if it's not implemented, it's not worth anything. So
Yeah.
it will be my main focus from now on, learning how to work with people and really understand not only what means good performance for me, but for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I've had a previous podcast as well where it's not in the knowledge, it's not in the strategy, but it's in the implementation we really see the value of it. And without seeing the value, the prior work isn't worth anything. It's just work. It's just occupying time and all these things. So it's interesting that you've gone like, how can we ensure that it's actually being used? And I like that. One of the things that you talked about is, and mentioned last time as well, was the importance of structure in business. After experiencing now the freedom of entrepreneurship, which I also remember that you said was a bit chaotic in the beginning. How do you go about navigating this completely free and open space, which at the same time is chaotic, called entrepreneurship in terms of structure?
Yes, usually entrepreneurship is called Wild Wild West. However, I was fascinated, but in the school at USC, when I entered business school, they offered entrepreneurship studies. And they
Mm.
had already were creating certain structures, how to approach it in more educated way instead of just jumping on every single tasks what comes in and opportunities, because it's just so many things to do in a startup.
Mm-hmm.
And then because again I'm coming from sports background, I really like to see how my coach always would present, even though lots of changes during the trainings are happening, but there is a structure how you select which workout when to do and how to decide what kind of techniques to use. Because I mean, it takes quite a while to see the proof if it was a good decisions or not in half a year or a year, and that actually counts a lot on your career. So
Mm-hmm.
I needed some kind of structure. So my previous school already gave me some opportunities. I had already business experience where a little bit more mature company, how it operated. And as my career in athletic, I thought why I was successful because I worked with one of the best experts in the
Mm.
world. So I thought I need this kind of guidance. I
Mm.
love guidance. I love working with coaches. I love this feedback loops, but not from anyone, but because everybody has opinions.
Yeah.
But from the persons who it's fitting to have this kind of conversation where we can challenge each other. So why not to try to get the best advices from the best experts. So this is where I entered entrepreneurial studies at MIT. And Bill Outlet has amazing concept of discipline entrepreneurship. So that was
Mm.
completely in line with my concept and philosophy of performance. And they actually drawing a lot of structures from the sports psychology too. Bill Outlet, he's really big basketball fan. So you can see quite a few analogies in his books and workshops. So, how to create the team, how to go through those conversations, what you have to, for example, how decisions will be made, how we're gonna argue, how the conflicting situations will be solved, and have those conversations before they're happening. It's critical. However, it's so rarely when we actually do those taking time, because we just need to answer the email, we need to go
Mm.
talk with an investors, we really need to ship the product, or do MVP and right away like jump in heated with heated decisions into the market. So how to tame those feelings of urgency and be really disciplined with your decision making, that's an art what also athletes need to master. So
Yeah.
those decisions for startups were very helpful.
Yeah. So was that the kind of like the way that you were able to introduce structure into the chaotic experience of entrepreneurship?
Yes, always ranking, and I still do the value of every uh, focus, what we decide as to be, how much time and when we need to spend on a team building, how much time we need
Hmm.
to actually understand the problem we're solving, what kind of customers we're serving, how we're serving. Really understanding the value of those decisions and how much time we spend on creating the strong foundations for those.
Yeah. Um, one of the things that I've talked with someone as well that wasn't originally in business is the transition to business, transition to entrepreneurship, and all those things. You mentioned that moving from sports to business was a bit difficult in the beginning as well. Not just the chaotic of entrepreneurship, but that as well. Like, what did you feel and experience to be the biggest challenges making that transition? Because of course, there are performance mindset aspects of athletic pursuits and performance and sports that can be translated, as you mentioned. But aside from that, what were kind of the biggest challenges that you experienced when you did that transition yourself?
I think so. The biggest challenge for me was assuming the experience what
Mm.
I have or philosophy, what it means to achieve the highest results or successes for everybody else.
Mm.
And also everything whole world is built on that, especially professional responsibilities and big consequences of decisions are happening. So it was crazy for me how people don't have coaches where they don't have instant feedback to whatever they do. So and also how unstructured everything was. This is where that
Mm.
concept came in, where I need to create my own, and it was quite difficult because in sports, okay, this is the structure how you go to Olympics. You have to go through these competitions, you have to go to build this kind of strength, technique and speed. So you know how to have those variables. In the real life, you kind of want to separate yourself from that rigidity.
Mm-hmm.
I, okay, after doing some freedom explorations and being frustrated knowing how much capabilities I have and how fast I can progress through the things, and how felt like it's nothing is achieved from my endpoint, I needed to start again, bridging those experiences what made me successful there to different aspects of life and creating the structures and some rigidities in that. Yes, so assumptions, structures, and other people
Hmm.
abilities, how they create their successes, being open to that too.
Yeah. So that's interesting in terms of how you had this implicit expectation that okay, in business people have structure and it's coaches so that you can have that constant pushing and development, where you found out that it isn't like that. And you also used the term the wild west to describe entrepreneurship. It's interesting. Why do you think it is such a difference from sports, where it's kind of like it's a quote unquote rigid structure, it's defined milestones and steps where you have a coach that pushes you, while in business it's kind of like nothing of those things?
I mean, sports is a science. Now, thankfully, also business and entrepreneurship becomes a science too. And this is what I really
Hmm.
love, especially last book of Below Athlete is emphasizing what it is very structured decision making, what you can make to be successful and to see the results, how to evolve innovation. However, the biggest difference what I see between sports and the structures to achieve the highest results and the business is in sports, the higher results athlete reach, the bigger supporting team becomes. And
Mm.
it becomes very natural, normal for every athlete to have not one but few coaches.
Yeah.
In business, other way around. The
Mm.
minute in career people achieve director positions, they expect to be mentors, but they still have a need for to be supported and coached, but it's not available anymore. There's a status what you're supposed to already know everything and now you're supposed to share with someone, but what about me?
Yeah.
I'm encountering bigger problems than ever before and have more responsibilities, and I have no one to talk to. I have
Yeah.
nowhere to share that experience or to actually to have that structural learning. So when I did a lot of private coaching, this is what I keep still hearing from the business leaders. Where I had the amazing client in Japan. There's a different also in the culture where when he entered the coaching, he didn't really understood where the benefit will be from our conversations. But the minute I challenge him, his thinking, I said like, why do you think this way? Like, can it be something different? Approach to the problem what you experience what you're having. I saw him just jumping back into his seat, and I was like, what did I ask?
Yeah.
And he reflected, but in 10 years nobody challenged his thinking.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. But it's interesting that you mentioned the fact that because I'm having conversations regarding this all the time in terms of the loneliness of the CEO or the loneliness of the director and top management, especially if you take the CEO role. Like, you don't necessarily have someone to talk to and share the things that you're going through with you. Like, there is obviously a need for transparency, both to the board, but also to your C-suite and the management team. But there are certain things you can't share as you would share with a coach. And I had a conversation, and I was actually supposed to have another conversation today about this topic exactly, like the how companies and management and founders and entrepreneurs need to have that additional support to be able to push through. And that we in business can take so much from sports in terms of how it's done there. And it's interesting that you highlighted the fact that the further an athlete gets to the top, the bigger the support team, because there's more things, there's more pressure, there's more small nuances that needs to be tweaked, and it's in the small things, not the big things, that makes the gradual progression. Not just, you can't change your entire technique overnight, that's impossible, but you can tweak how you have the back foot when you toss the javelin, for example. So I like that in terms of highlighting that big difference. But one of the things that you did in this transition is that you didn't just one day go from sports full time to being an entrepreneur full time. it was the transition where you kind of like did both at the same time. How did you do that? Did you have any strategy? How did you structure things to be able to do those two things, which is, you could say, being a professional athlete in two different formats simultaneously?
Of course, I had a strategy. That's the only way how I function.
Yeah.
The strategy was I will try to see if it's
Mm.
possible.
Yeah. To kind of like push that boundary again. Let's see where
Yes,
the boundaries are.
yes, yes, exactly. Because um, this is what you do in sports. You try and you immerse yourself in the experience, and you only then have some information to make a further decision. But
Mm.
if you never done before, you haven't seen too many people done it before, you shouldn't limit yourself saying like, oh, it's impossible, but let's see if it works for you or not. So that's a key for me, giving myself time to experiment and be really clear with what kind of intent I am immersed in that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was about to graduate from USC, I felt I still have some big froze in me, what I didn't recorded yet.
Mm-hmm.
But also I understood what I'm not gonna make too much money from sports because you have to just to be at ridiculous levels to make money, especially in javelin at that time too. But also business world really fascinated me. This is why I went to
Mm-hmm.
business school. I love problem solving, and businesses are all about problems. I wanted to start having the experience of the real world of that, not only studies what I'd done. So I gave myself a year to try both careers at once and to see if I'm becoming worse of the athlete or not. And
Mm.
actually, it was the best season of my career at USC.
Really?
Is where I had my biggest marks too, because first time in my life where I had to really ability disconnect from one or another one, because all my days were so structured to make sure it fits those two careers perfectly. So I had no chance or time to wonder what if or what's
Mm.
going bad here, good. It's just like now I have to really focus on work, because at 3 p.m. I have to be in the practice I have only 2 hours with the coach. I really have to focus here to get the most out of it, because after that I will be at work. And
Mm.
then after work, like now I really need to rest because another day starts tomorrow with a lot of intensity. So it
Yeah.
gave me this healthy distance and rhythm, but it was just right for me.
Yeah. So, are there any particular learnings you took from kind of like jiggling those two careers simultaneously? Like, if there's a kind of like, are there one or two key things that you brought with you from that year of testing?
Yes, in that year of testing, I learned how to manage my energy and time quite well, and also listen less other people's opinions.
That's interesting.
Because many people would say like, why you go through this pain? Why, like, everybody saw me running around here and there, but it didn't felt hard for me because I knew why I'm doing it. I knew this is how I created for myself this kind of
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle. I knew also I can always change it if something is not fitting for me, and because I could. So all of us have really amazing capabilities and capacities. So by us, it is our own respecting our bodies and minds and creating those environments to see what's possible. But nobody
Mm.
else will build those environments for you, but environment to nurture ourselves to those levels or experiences what we strive to have, it's crucial, because sometimes we don't even know what's possible. It was completely by chance where man with mustaches came and he said, "You're gonna be a javelin thrower." And when I came to the first practice, he said, "We train to Olympics." I had no idea what that meant, but I kept creating and being in environments where those kind of people, high level experts, were around, noticing the talents, noticing and then knowing how to nurture, develop people.
Yeah.
So that's up to us.
That's interesting. You mentioned the fact that, okay, not necessarily being swayed by what other people mean. And I like the fact that, because this highlights, I think, entrepreneurship so nicely. The fact that, why are you pushing yourself through this hardship? And I had another guest on the podcast that said, like, being an entrepreneur is like being an artist. It's a part of our soul. Like, it's a part of our being. It's a part of what the air we breathe in. Without it, we wouldn't be able to thrive and live. And I like the fact that you mentioned that. But there's this constant balance, and you kind of like mention it in terms of, you need structure in the chaos. And you coined a term that I really liked, which was focus freedom, in terms of having structure, but leaving that little space for creativity, where the ideas and the juices can go flowing. How have you used this in later years when it comes to coaching and being a business owner?
This concept, focused freedom, is when we perform at the highest level, right? So the moment what set me to this career, it was exactly that concept, when I did all the warm up, all the preparation, all those lots of different experiences, competitions, and years of training, what installed in me how to handle pressure, how to ways, what kind of flow I have and technique. So in the most pressured situation, I could be completely free. I had no doubt in my mind what I should do because of those years of training. And that I understood what I need to do with all my essence, but I also was completely free in my essence. So this is what we keep creating for ourselves. So I always see how during the day, like now this talk is free flow, right? But we did
Yeah.
some preparation before. We know what the conversation or questions we're going to focus on, but when we enter it, we cannot overthink it, because then we start limiting our subconscious with conscious, and it has lots of limits, our conscious thinking. So when we let it go, we are aware of many more variables, more opportunities, more interesting, giving ourselves the chance to really, how you said, artistically create in the moment. And those are the innovations, the most beautiful parts where we can immerse ourselves. But also we need to have a trust, us letting to be in that freedom, because it's less control. And we don't know what kind of results will be. So many people could be not comfortable with that uncertainty. But also there's a lot of magic in that.
Yeah, it's. I think it is kind of like a balance between trusting the process and trusting that, okay, I can be consciously aware and tuned in to pick up on small things, and I believe that the again, trusting in the process. Like, at the end of the day, I think it's more important to have that free flowing, let's say, train of thought and process of exploration than necessarily having this super rigid structure that you have no flexibility in. And I think a lot of people see this as difficult. So if someone listening in or watching this on YouTube, for example, found, okay, focus freedom, that's something interesting. How or what advice would you give to kind of like, okay, if I want to try to implement this, how do I balance structure with allowing myself the space, or having enough space for those sprouts of creativity? Like, what advice would you give to someone that, okay, this is an interesting concept, I would like to explore this further?
It definitely needs to be developed. And you mentioned about trusting the process, and I really love my co-founder in Elevating Leadership Institute emphasizes, but the process needs to be trusted.
Mm.
Like there's a process, but we also need to know if it is trustworthy.
Mm. That's interesting.
So I know what kind of preparation I need to do to throw javelin, right? What kind of warm up I need to do. So this is I can trust. And then when I go into this free flow, I can trust what my body already knows how to react to the pressures, and then how to do many intricate things in javelin, where how I hold it, how my hip on foot, and how I'm breathing, and rhythms, and where I'm looking. Like there's so many details what you mentioned in the high level sports. It's not only like holding the implement in your arm. It becomes like lots of different things what need to come together in a smooth way, in a beautiful way, effortless way. And this is what I call professionalism, where really hard things becomes effortless. But
Mm.
to be able to enter into that, we need to have the process what gets us trusting what our body already knows how to do it. So this is why there is progression of whatever we're learning or doing, to know how we perform the best at. So we try new technique, we see in a safe environment how it goes, what feelings we have. It's kind actually it seems and feels quite good. Then we put a little bit pressure. Now let's do it for the result, or like to really by pushing it further. Now let's do it in a small competition in between ourselves. Now we're
Mm.
going to enter the state meet, and then world championship, and so on. So we gradually build it up. So in that training, you already train and the structure where you test
Mm.
the process, what you can be trusted, and also when you say like, okay, let's see what happens now. So this is where you allow yourself to be free.
Yeah.
So to convert this example into the work experience for the presentations or negotiations, right? Like I know how to start, I know how to lead, I know which points I get stuck. Like
Yeah.
first two times when people tell me no, I give up. There is opportunity to keep pushing. Okay, I
Yeah.
know this moment, so I train visualizing with other people, with coaches, those moments where I feel like, okay, I'm not losing this strength, not become weaken myself and giving up because of the pressure. But when you actually do it in negotiations, you enter maybe with smaller stake. You go through it with the free flow. You're allowing yourself, okay, let's see what happens. I allow
Yeah.
myself to perform. I allow myself to make mistakes, because I will have a chance to have more accurate information what to improve next. So creating the situations where you explore, where you can afford make mistakes.
Yeah. I like that. It's a good answer, I think, to something that someone it isn't. It's a good answer, but it's a difficult answer. And if you could think, look
Very,
at it
very
that way, like it's
difficult to do it.
not the fixed way or correct way of doing it. It's trial and error and figuring out your own balance in terms of starting with baby steps and then some largers and then and gradually upgrading it to something that where it becomes like kind of like second nature, kind of.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
that's the goal of it being automatic. And then
Yeah.
I love those feelings.
It's good when it basically just flows. One of the things that I want to kind of to some degree look back to is the act of asking for help. It's super typical in sports, but not so much in business. Like, what do you think is the reason why, for example, entrepreneurs or C-suite or managers not that often ask for help? And what do you think we can do to maybe start a transition for that?
Because our society rewards this state of I can do it on my own, this independence, right? And then up to this point, many high performers, this is how they define their success, and this is how their self-esteem looks at their strengths, like, oh, I can do it on my own. I've been doing it on my own. However, we come to the places facing problems with more consequences where it's okay to ask for help, but then we may lose our internal face for ourselves, or that face could be lost to outside world, like how they're gonna look to me as a leader if will show what I don't know something, or I'm not capable to do it, or I have no capacity to do so. This is where this environment of overwork comes in, because we are not knowing our boundaries. And when I talk to my clients, professionals, I say, like, when you go to a doctor, there's one person, family doctor, who is generalist, but you're not gonna ask them to do heart surgery on you. There's a specialist, but at the surgeon, you're not gonna ask them to fix your broken leg. There are reasons why we specialize in certain subjects, and then we say, like, I cannot do your leg surgery because I specialize in the heart. This is the expert who does that,
Yeah.
orthopod, like whatever. So us knowing what our strengths and our biggest value is, then it's easier to delegate, it's easier to create a bigger value, it's easier for us understand our competitiveness, and create those healthy boundaries around what's ours and what's not ours, for
Yeah.
ourselves and others.
Yeah. So one, it's the current, let's say, status quo is defined by the cultural aspect of you get a pat on the shoulder if you're able to do it yourself. Kind of like, okay, yeah, I managed to do it, kind of. But to take that leap forward, it's acknowledging that you have strengths and weaknesses. Where, okay, focus on your strengths and see what are the strengths of other people and how can they supplement yours, so that you have a, let's say, full suite of strengths and not just having your couple of strengths and several weaknesses. I think that's a good one. In terms of the steps forward for what you're doing currently, because you're building Elevating Leadership Institute, what's the end game? What's the goal moving forward for the company and the entrepreneurial pursuit that you're currently on?
Because of that loneliness need, and also it's quite fascinating too when you work with the client one on one. However, when you guide experience to similar experiencing people at the high stakes, there's different kind of magic happens when they share and when they open the doors to go deeper into the problems with a little bit more transparency. Because as you said, in the company, it's really hard to share with your colleagues what you're going through, because everybody have stakes, everybody have to filter certain things what they
Yeah.
say or do, because a leader needs to show strength even though they feel also super stressed, so other people would feel stronger. And then for the board, you have to present, yes, you have to talk about the problems, but how you feel about those problems and how you're handling, like, with kind of capacity. There's no one to talk to at home. Families not really gonna may understand what that means. So to have the space when you can see, and this is where in our program here the most, especially in the beginning of our programs, where it's like, oh my god, other people feel like me too.
Mm.
And high level people whom you again have this kind of image what they all figure it out, they already
Yeah.
should have known everything, maybe they're not stressing anymore as I stressing every single day when the board member or chair is keep calling me or requesting CEO. But it's like we all dealing with the same problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. The acknowledgement and recognition that you're not alone. in feeling things, even though that you're at the top, where it's quote unquote culturally expected that you have everything sorted out. I use this metaphor when, or when I heard this metaphor first when I started my entrepreneurial journey at 16, and it gave me personally a lot of relief. And it was that growing up, we perceive adults as having figured it out, and especially people at the top, kind of like people who have achieved great things. But we're all just people blindfolded in the dark trying to find our path. And to have that guiding light, and okay, yeah, you're not alone. I think that's a very noble thing because we need it as a society. I truly believe so. It's and that's also a bit of the reasons why we reached out and we were able to bring you onto podcast in the beginning. Like you had this nice balance between sports and performance, and how can we transition that over to business and making sure that we have a support structure for top management and entrepreneurs. I think that's so important.
Absolutely. I mean, our strengths so much into the people whom we surround to. So, and for me, why I still talk to my coach. Like literally, he called me Friday. 24 years, still continuing
Yeah.
the same conversation, but we already know ourselves so well. So we're not talking about weather anymore. We literally goes like, okay, what's going on in your life or his life? And then we go to the depths, like, this is what I'm fearing. This is what I'm still getting stuck with. And then we can help ourselves to take that another step so much with much easiness. And
Yeah.
whenever I get stuck, so it's like what I can try to do. And then if I don't find it, okay, who can help me?
Yeah.
Quick, help me.
Yeah. Ask for help. I think the summa summarum and the extract, if we were to kind of like have one thing, ask for help, because you can't do everything yourself, and you will get way further and faster if you actually have someone to support you. I asked you to prepare one question at the end, because we're reaching close to 50 minutes, and I think it's time to kind of like try to encapsulate it all with that final question. And I ask this to everyone, Inga, and it goes like this, and hopefully you prepared it as well. And it is, if you could get an answer to one question related to your business and what you do, what would it be, and what would you like to know?
When I'm starting a new company now, the success, again, how we measure success of the company, it's quite straightforward in the startup and business world. How much you raised, how much revenue you got, how big you got, did you go public,
Yeah.
how bigger you can get, how many employees you have, customers, and so on. However, for me, with the quality of the service what we're creating, and also knowing what's scalable, what's not, I'm wondering how big should we get. And in general too, being mindful of what success means in different aspects of our lives and whatever we're creating or building, like in art, right? Like, what is success? Is like the selling them more of the price, the small ones, or the value of it, or just getting lost for the creativity part, where doesn't matter if nobody sees it. So what
Yeah.
is the success, right? So for me, for my business, now the question is, how big should we go?
Yeah. Huh. That's a good question. I think it's not a question that's often asked to entrepreneurs, especially. I think the expected default is as far as you can,
Yeah.
but that's not probably the best approach. And I think to kind of like maybe to just give an answer on the spot in terms of how I see it, it's kind of like how you describe finding the freedom, the structured
Mm.
freedom. Like I think it's a bit of trial and error, figuring out, okay, small scale you can deliver that pristine quality and customer experience. At a larger scale, with more people, more operations, more admin, more ad hoc logistics, it's less pristine, and kind of like figuring out one's balance. But I really like the question, like, when is enough in terms of scale as an entrepreneur and as a founder? So yeah, I think that's good.
Enoughness, yes, it's really beautiful question to ask, and it is high performance question. Um,
Mm,
in how much technique is enough, how much strength is enough, how much speed is enough to balance all the elements so they would flow
yeah,
just in optimal state. Because if you're gonna be too strong, maybe you're gonna become too slow, and it's not
yeah,
gonna serve you. So everything cannot happening at once, but what is that enoughness in all those spheres, what creates the success, and then focused freedom flow. The thing what I wanted to mention was also, as a entrepreneur, as a founder, we need to know where we thrive and where we don't,
mm,
right? Because different scales of the business requires completely different skill sets. And if you have this ambition of learning those new skill sets, then it's fine to keep going and to being CEO, but maybe it's okay to stay in the place or in the knowledge where you thrive. Maybe you don't have
yeah,
this kind of ambition to learn, because being specialist in product or certain theme and managing people or talking to investors is completely different skill sets, and
yeah,
many don't enjoy that. So what's the purpose of what you do? Only earn
yeah,
money, but until as a startup you're gonna start earning money, there's gonna be many years of non earning money and then suffering for betting maybe one day you're gonna earn that.
yeah,
But why not
yeah,
to enjoy the process also towards that? Yes, it's possible to have high performance, and by the way, higher high performance not through the pain but from the pleasure.
yeah. I had an early mentor that said that there's three categories of entrepreneurs. You have the founders, the startuppers, so the ones that create. You
Mm.
have the administrators, so the CEOs, and then you have the scalers. And if you are a scaler, you're not going to like the two previous ones or the two other ones. If you're a startup, you're probably going to start a bunch of things, but you're not going to be able to maintain them. So they basically fly and burn and crash. So kind of like figuring out what, let's say, archetype you are, and what you really like doing. I think that's super important. And I think that's kind of like the final advice to the listeners and the viewers. Like, figure out what you're good at, figure out what you like, and spend more time doing that, because that's going to be a way more enjoyable ride than chewing glass doing what you don't like. Um,
Accepting with pride our differences and how you said it, those archetypes, whatever we are, and being proud what this is, what we can do, and then we can thrive in that. It's not necessary what we need to know all of it. There's beautiful thing that a lot of people exist in this world. We can find beautiful partnerships to create those strengths together, we complement each other.
yeah. If people want to learn more about what you do, find you and reach out, what's the best place to find you and learn more about what you guys do?
LinkedIn. I post there a lot about Elevating Leadership Institute programs. We're just wrapping up self leadership sprint with executives from all around the world who enjoy really structured learning how to manage energy better. And then they can find there my own thoughts of development, what I do with clients, or where how I push my own limits too. I love this also, bridging my own experiences with theories. I
Yeah,
like
that's good.
practice. I love results.
Yeah, that's great. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna, for the people listening and watching, we're gonna ensure that the links is down in the description and the summary and the show notes, so that it's easy for them to, let's say, just click in, connect, send a message on LinkedIn, for example, read more about the about your business on your website and stuff like that. But Inga, I really enjoyed this chat, and thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Thank you, Harold. You're really good at leading the conversation.